In the last video, we talked about how to use Llama 3.1-405B as a chatbot on the new DL384 Gen 12 system. In this example, I'm going to walk you through what else you can do. Of course, there's all sorts of things that you can chat about through a chatting interface, but there's other interfaces that we can use to interact with the models that are hosted on this system. Because Ollama is a flexible API, we're able to access that API not just through the Open Web UI here, but also through a more unique experience, which is as a coding assistant. I'm going to pop up VS Code, which hopefully many watching this video are familiar with. It's a standard IDE for developing code in all sorts of languages. I've got two simple files that I'm working on here. In one case, a Streamlit chatbot using Llama Index for retrieval augmented generation on the left side. And on the right side, I've got a Docker file that I'm using to build my Docker image for this application. In VS Code, I have installed an extension that's open source, available through the Apache 2.0 license, called Continue, Continue.Dev. And Continue is accessible through quick command line shortcuts, Control L, Control I, and tab to autocomplete, to give an experience very similar to GitHub Copilot. And what it's going to do is I've configured this model, the front end interface here, to actually connect to the Ollama API that was serving the same interface as previously. As you can see here, simple suggestions come from Continue. What I've done is I've highlighted the entire run.py on the left side, and I'm going to select from this dropdown, in this case, the 405 billion parameter model. Actually, I'm going to go with the 3.18B just to show some simple examples. If I go help, we're going to get a quick explanation of what's going on in here. It seems that the script is missing a main function. There's undefined variables, and there's some magic strings that are recommended. In this case, you could replace this string with a direct example. And nicely enough, Llama 3.8b actually provides an updated version of my code. So I'm just going to click this, insert cursor, and it's going to make a replacement in line here. Pretty powerful example of what's going on. Another example, I'll do the same thing, Control L, and I'll just ask for an explanation. And so you can see, even if I was a developer that's learning about code, sometimes it's easier to write code than it is to read it. I would get a assistant that basically explains things and has a lot of knowledge about this. I can also select which model I want to work with. So in this case, I'm getting quick responses from Llama 3.8b, but I can also select that 405b model that I was sharing earlier in the chat interface and ask for further explanation. In this case, it's going to be a little bit slower to start up because we know we have to get that model into GPU memory and swap it with the smaller model. But there's space for both, and we get a pretty quick latency. The response starts pretty quickly, and it may be actually higher quality from this larger model, but it's going to be a little bit slower here. Another fun thing that I can do is start and show you how to create an application from scratch. So I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it bubble.py. And we're going to show actually the suggestion here through Control I. I can actually ask for a prompt to edit code right here. So in this case, I'm going to stick with the 405B model. You can see it's almost done generating an explanation here on the right side. I'm going to ask it to, actually, we're going to switch back to the 8 billion parameter version of this model and ask it to write a function for bubble sort. There it goes. Looks like we've got the function. It's complete. And one fun thing that I like to do right in my IDE, Control I, I'm going to actually ask it to rewrite this function using C++ syntax. kind of see as it suggests a switch. It's initializing variables and things like that, using a syntax like the semicolons at the end of lines, and accessing arrays with square brackets. So I'm gonna accept all of these, and I'm gonna basically show one last thing, which is accessing a different kind of model. So in this case, I'm going to try and prompt this model to actually start writing code. And there it goes. I've got a separate model called StarCoder, which is specifically tuned for autocomplete. And I get access to basically tab to complete suggestions right in my code from this model that, just like the previous ones, is basically served through the same interface of Ollama as the other models. And here, I had to get things going there, but this is a reasonable auto completion for, calling the main function and defining an array, and then calling the bubble sort algorithm, showing the output on screen in the standard out, printing the array. There's some basic stuff that's actually working here, even just by doing tab to autocomplete. I'll finish by showing that we actually download these models from Ollama and see them in a list here right from the Open Web UI. So I've got access to StarCoder that's I've specifically configured for auto completion, Llama 3.1-405, 8 billion, and 70 billion parameters, all available on, again, like the previous video, just two GPUs here, right? We really have two super chips where you've got the ARM CPU from NVIDIA called Grace, and the H100 GPU from the Hopper generation, co-packaged on the same substrate. What this does, and maybe some of the performance benefits that I haven't really spoken about so far, is unlocked by ARM. There's basically 7 times more memory bandwidth going from the CPU to the GPU and back than there is in a standard x86 CPU, which means that not only can we fit the models on that are so large on 144 gigs of GPU memory times 2 for 2 superchips in this system, but they can actually run quite fast. This 8 billion parameter model that I was showing is much faster than on a standard x86 system, and the 405 billion parameter model, it's not terribly slow. We were seeing that output out there on the right side of the screen, and it's pretty interactive, right? You can kind of ask follow-up questions. When would I use a Docker file? Again, this is my 405 billion parameter version of the model, and it doesn't like rip through the whole page, but an industry standard server running this in 2 units of rack space in your data center is pretty incredible performance, and we think a really, really nice way to get started for deploying LLMs. So in summary, in these 2 videos that you've just watched, we've shown that simultaneously we can run a chat interface and a coding assistant, all calling roughly the same model endpoints using roughly the same 2 GPUs. And it's effectively a way to get started serving models in a controlled environment. You don't really need to have external public access. You don't need to have anything, any data that's being pushed to a counterparty and potentially risky for the business. You can basically just get started with a chatbot and a coding assistant all on one single server. I think I timed out here, so let me start a new chat with Llama 405B. And how would I wrap up a video where I introduced a coding assistant running in any data center with full control for the user. There we go. There's 405B finishing the video for me from the chat interface. And as you saw, we were just getting some output from the coding assistant interface as well.